Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Graham. This is Bike Bros. This is an empty showroom in the upstairs of our shop. We're going to have a quick look today at the Marin Nicasio Plus. So this guy here, while being one of our least expensive drop bar bikes we've maybe ever sold in the shop, was probably one of the most conversation-worthy bikes that we got in 2022. This is the Marin Nicasio Plus. It's a 650B. Why is it that we can't call them 650Bs? Anyways, it's a 650B chromoly drop bar bike that kind of defies any kind of categorization, because it's just built around being that fun drop bar bike that instead of hanging in your garage is actually out there getting used, because you can do so much on it. So why the conversation when we're talking about, in drop bar life, a relatively cheap bike then? I would say there's a couple things. There is, in bike world, I would say there is this romantic appeal of a chromoly steel drop bar bike. There's just something beautiful about the simple aesthetic. There's also something beautifully simple about single ring drivetrains, disc brakes on a bike like this, and seeing drop bars with fat tires. So I will go over the specs on this guy here, and not so much the numbers, because it does fit, I would say, a bit like a traditional road bike with maybe a touch slacker angles, but we'll look at some of the spec and talk about who might really enjoy a bike like this. So to start with, the magic comes from the fact that we have an microshift Advent 9-speed drivetrain on here. So you don't see this kind of thing too often from the bigger companies, because they tend to play pretty conservative, pretty traditionally, using either Shimano or SRAM drivetrain components, which pretty much limits you as to what you're able to do. That cassette that I focused on before, that is an 1146 9-speed cassette, which is basically something that outside of this microshift world really doesn't exist on a drop bar bike, because there is no rear derailleur and drop bar shifter that's really going to be able to run this sort of stuff. So this is a bike that is made possible by the people at Microshift, thinking a little bit outside the box, and then having the product designers at Marin being a bit more creative and really looking to do something that was special, and not just taking the standard off-the-shelf components from the big manufacturers to do another bike that's the same as the rest. So that's a lot of magic to have a full drivetrain. Like, that's basically a 20 speeds worth of gear range in 9 speeds, all operated with that single shifter. It's pretty much, I would say, a little bit like a campy style shifter, where you've got two separate toggles there that are designed to be operated from the hoods. When they do stuff like that, that means you can actually use FSA narrow wide style chainring. This totally cleans up the aesthetics, which goes hand in hand with that oh so appealing straight skinnier tubes that we get on a chromoly bike. Matched up with that, the WTB Horizon. This is a 650B by 47C tire. It's a pretty smooth tire, and I do have a few people who have asked, like, is this going to be any good if I'm riding gravel? And I would say, yes, I actually think that will be okay for riding gravel, because largely in the kind of gravel we get around here, it's flotation basically on the loose stuff, as opposed to trying to get your tires to bite into the surface that you're riding on. So as long as you've got a relatively soft, large volume tire, you're good to go. We've got rack mounts on here, fender mounts, a pair of threaded mounting points down here, fender mount down in there, 2 water bottle cages, disc brakes again on here. So they are, I mean, I would say if I had one thing to criticize, I'd probably prefer to see a dual piston style mechanical brake, which we've become pretty big fans of. Down below the brake there, those 2 holes, and I believe that is what they would consider a 40mm kickstand mount, in case you're inclined to kickstand this bike. We also have some fork mounts here if you want to do low riders or anything gauge, anything like that. 160 rotor on the front, once again that Tektro brake caliper. Can you get an idea of the flare on those bars? That's a 12-degree flare, so it gives you a little bit of that new school kind of gravel feel without getting too carried away. The Marin saddle, which is actually a pretty comfortable saddle in this case. 27.2 seat post. And that is the details of this bike. Now, who would use this and for what? I think this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is the bike that rather than hanging in your garage is leaned up right at the entrance to your garage because you keep on grabbing it. You'd maybe ride it with flat pedals and blast to the store on it. If you've got half an hour, you go for some pathway laps. If you've got an hour, you go for some pathway and gravel laps. If you got 2 hours, I mean, short of joining any kind of full spandex road group, go for a highway ride. These things, my experience with riding on fatter tired gravel bikes, it basically means you end up searching for terrain that's undulating, for somewhere that has a lot more curves, so pathways become interesting, because cornering on these kind of broad tires that are relatively slick is the most enticing thing ever. You just want to ride around like an idiot, and it really brings back some of the childish, pure fun of riding a bike while still being about as utility-centric a bike as you can get. So this thing can do the chores and it can put a smile on your face at the same time. We have a number of these on order. This is a 54. We try to keep these in stock as long as Marin has stock. We'll have stock. So if this interests you, you can check our website, www.bikebros.ca, and it'll actually show live inventory on there usually. Or give us a shout to find out when the next versions of this are coming in. But if you're after a bike that you can fall in love with for its simplicity and for the fact that it keeps on putting a smile on your face because you keep on heading out and riding the paths, a Marin Nicasio Plus might just be the bike for you. Thanks so much, guys.